I know what prayer can do. 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 I know
Yeah,
what
thank you
prayer
very
can
much.
do.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to confirm that everyone can hear me because I'm using my headphones.
Yes, we can hear. If you
Okay,
keep it at
thank you.
that, but any lower, we will have difficulties hearing. But yes, speak loudly and that we can. Yes. So go ahead, please.
Okay, all right, thank you. Um, this morning, my topic is where do I fit in? It's a question, where do I fit in? It's personal. That's my topic. And I wanted to take us to Numbers 21, Numbers chapter 21. And if we can read first from verse 4 to 6. The king of Arad, the Canaanite who dwelt in the south, heard that Israel was coming on the road to Atharim. Then he fought against Israel and took some of them prisoners. So Israel made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. And the Lord listened to the voice of Israel and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. So the name of that place was called Hormah. Um, let's continue in verse 4. Then they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. And the soul of the people became very discouraged on the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and our soul loathes this worthless bread. So the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. Um, I also want to remind us of Exodus chapter 32, when Moses went up to the mountains and the people were discouraged again because they did not see Moses. Um, I want to believe it was for 40 days. And if I'm for lack of time, I didn't want to go to to that book. But if I'm incorrect, somebody can correct me. I believe it was 40 days. But they became discouraged again, and they put pressure on Aaron, as I summarized, and he made them a god. Um, and when I read the book of Numbers and Exodus, I was filled with all kinds of emotions. Most of all, I judged the Israelites because I kept thinking, the Lord delivered you from Egypt. He provided bread and meat. You know, like when we are judging that friend, complaining about the same things over and over and over again. It was one thing to the next. Then I started to put myself in their shoes and ask, how would I have reacted? Would it be Would I be like Aaron and Miriam in Numbers 12, discouraged as in Numbers 21, 4 to 6, after the victory mentioned in verse 1 to 3? Would I accuse and turn against my leaders and God the same way because I didn't see it the way they did? I didn't see the vision. Since over and over, the people were impatient, inconsistent, and lacked faith, and could justify it, like in Numbers 13, when some of the spies thought that the land was indeed flowing with milk and honey. But the Anakim, the people were strong. They said to the congregation, they were giant-sized people, and the Anakim, they were giant-sized people, and they were believed to be descendants of Goliath. They were giant-sized people, the descendants of Anak. They were long-necked. That's from Numbers 13, 28, when the people that were sent to spy out the land came back and was reporting. Think about it. Would we be those other spies, or would we be with Caleb and Joshua? Consider what they saw. Where have you been where have you been? On the flip side, in the New Testament, consider Jesus going through all that he went through. Not once did he allow himself to be brought to this level of discouragement. Impatient with the people who kept rejecting him. He knew Judas would betray him, yet he washed his feet. He knew Peter would deny him, yet he said in Luke 22:31, I have prayed for you that your faith should not fail. And when you have returned to me, strengthen your brethren. I want to encourage us this morning that life gets hard. We have experienced real hurt, betrayal, tragedy. We cannot neglect who we are, whose we are, and in whom we believe. I want to encourage us to worship the Lord, worship in the downtime, worship in the time of trouble, worship when things get tough. Be intentional, be present. Many times we can't wait to come out of a situation. We murmur and we complain about situations. And like I mentioned before, sometimes they're valid reasons. But don't go around in circles. The Bible said that we are overcomers. I'm not dismissing the fact that things are hard. They're really tough times in our life. They're really tough seasons. They're really tough journeys. They're really tough roads. And the pain that you have experienced, that we have experienced, is real. But let us learn to see God in the moment. Let us learn to reverence God in the moment. I just want to share a testimony that I have, what brought on this word. I worked with an optical company for 10 years, and things had not been going good for a long time. And I've been praying to God. I didn't want to leave with the wrong intentions. I just wanted to make sure that that any transition I made from that job, from that role, would be a good one, would be a peaceful one. And this year, finally, after 10 years, I felt like God opened the door for me, and I got another opportunity with a private optical company, and I took the opportunity. And I was so excited. I was so happy about it. And I still wanted to search to make sure that this is what God wanted, that He wanted me to go to this position. Anyway, eventually I resigned and I took the position. And 2 weeks later, I started my new job, all excited. It was another colleague of mine that I'd worked with before that got me that position. And the first day of work, I realized that this colleague, she was a lot older than me. She's probably like in the mid 60s, late 60s. And I realized how she was being treated. And the very first day, I realized how she was being treated, and it was so uncomfortable. She would be addressed in front of patients, and it was just really uncomfortable. And I began to question. I was like, God, what is this? What is going on? And I probably said, this is what I have to put up with, or something along those lines. And that was the first day, and it continued. Every day there was something, and she would be reprimanded. It was disrespectful the way they were treating her. I couldn't put my finger on it, and I was just so disturbed about it. After about three weeks, it just kept getting worse and worse. And so I would have lunch with her. I tried not, I didn't, at first I didn't mention anything, but it was so disturbing that she asked me if I noticed, and I acknowledged that I did. And so we would go to lunch together because I was closer to her than anybody else, anyone else in the office. And when we came back from lunch, I felt like I started getting attacked. Like I was told that we cannot go to lunch together. Um, and I was like, what is going on? Like, why all of a sudden this is happening? Then things just started popping up. And every time we were together, there was a problem. And I'm like, this this is not what I signed up for. This is ridiculous. And I did remember praying about it. I cried out to God about it because it was so uncomfortable. And I was not used to that in my previous job. Eventually, um, the another lead, one of my supervisors, um, she asked me about it, and I mentioned that it's uncomfortable, and we all agreed in our department that it was a problem, and it was not it was there were a lot of rules being broken by our office manager, as it pertains to HR, um, but nothing was done about it. And this other supervisor, she agreed with us and everything. Then a week after that, the office manager would come to us and ask us not to touch the supervisor's stuff. And it's like it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And that was like the breaking point for me. The stuff that she said just hit me. The stuff that she told us that we should not be doing, it hit me really hard because I'm like, I spoke to this supervisor. I have, I felt like I confided in her. We agreed that this was not right what was happening to this specific individual. And now we're being told not to touch our supervisor's computer and not to do this and not to do that. And I felt so betrayed. And I'm like, you were with us in this department. You could have told us this. And instead, you got the manager to come to tell us stuff that seemed so petty. And that hit me really hard. I felt like, okay, I need to take my bag and leave. Like, this is ridiculous. And I was so disappointed. I was so distraught. I was out of it. I wanted nothing to do with this supervisor. I was so cold. And since I remember that night I came home, I was so I was willing to quit. I was willing to forget about it. I didn't know what was going to be the next step, what was going to happen, but I was just willing to quit. Eventually, I got past the quitting part because I realized that was not going to happen. It didn't make sense. But I knew that I wanted nothing to do with that supervisor. And I was standing in my kitchen sink and I started to cry out to God. I said, God, how do I deal with this young lady who I felt had betrayed me? I felt that she had lured me into this job, and I gave up my position, made this big move, and this is what's happening to me. I don't want nothing to do with this young lady. Was my words to God. And God said, no, you're gonna forget about it. You're gonna forgive her. And again, that hit me. I'm like, what? I cannot do that. I don't want to work with her. I need to leave. And God said, no, you're gonna forgive her. That's your ministry. She's not saved. She don't know who Christ is. You do. Meanwhile, this other individual has been treated unfairly. She's a Christian. I'm a Christian. We're both believers. It's a Jewish doctor, Jewish, it's a Jewish doctor that owned the practice. But nobody is saved, just the two of us. The lady that's been treated fairly and myself. And I just began to cry out to God. I said, God, give me strength. Show me how to do this. I just began to cry out to God. And that's when God brought me, because I'd read Numbers, the entire book of Numbers in earlier this year. And God brought me back to the book of Numbers. And I was like, God, help me not to curse my blessing. Help me not to curse what you have done for me. Help me not to let this cloud everything else that you've done for me, everything that you have taken me from. And this is why I am bringing this message today to help us to see how we can curse what God has blessed us with. Because we forget, we so easily forget where we came from. We so easily forget the last hurdle, the last thing he did for us, how many times he delivered us. The people of Israel, they were in bondage. God delivered them. When they got to the Red Sea and they saw the challenge before them, they started. And God began to show me that we do the same thing over and over. And because of our complaining, because of us not seeing God for who he is, we miss our blessings. And we sometimes is living in a circle. We just keep going around and around. We're not overcoming. We're not getting to where God wants us to get to because of just our mindset of staying in a place, our mindset of going back, our mindset of 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 not wanting to be uncomfortable. Coming out of the sometimes change is uncomfortable. And our blessing is in that. And so I just thank God. The end of it is that I thank God that I was able to go into that office the next day with peace. I was still hurt, but God, I felt like God just kept comforting me because I was willing. I realized that I had to do what God wanted me to do. I had to let go of that supervisor. I had to lay it down. I had to get over it, get over that hurt, that betrayal that I felt. It was so real that I just wanted to leave. I wanted nothing. I am a person, I don't like drama. I don't like, but God wanted me to get over it and to not hold this person in my heart, but to show them the love of Christ. And because of his strength, because of his mercies, because of his grace, I was able to do that. And I give God praise this morning. When we look at in Exodus, not in Exodus, even in Numbers 20, when God asked, even Moses, I saw became discouraged in Exodus 20 when the people were thirsty and God gave command to Moses and to Aaron to strike the rock. He told them to strike the rock. No, to speak to the rock, sorry. He told them to speak to the rock. And instead of speaking, they strike the rock. And when I read that particular chapter, leading up to them striking the rock instead of speaking to the rock, I felt like Moses was frustrated. Like that was his time of frustration. Like he was tired of the people, of the things that he said leading up to that. And he did not hallow God. I just want to, I think I have enough time for us to read that. Um, and Moses and Aaron in Exodus chapter 20, verse 10. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. And he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock?" Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock, twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their animals drank. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe me to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall bring this assembly into the land, which you shall not, I'm sorry, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given you. And when I look up the hallow that is mentioned twice um, in this chapter, it says hallow. To hallow God is to treat him as holy and to uphold him as sacred in the sight of others. In 20, is demonstrated through trust and obedience. Moses and Aaron struck the rock instead of talking to it as God commanded them. And even him as a leader was discouraged because there are so many things, saints, that happen in it that I can remember reading in Numbers. So many times the people kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So my encouragement to us today is to not forget where God has taken us from. It's to not to forget what he has done for us, not to forget his promises, not to forget that he's a God that never fails. He's a God that never changes. His word said that he will never leave us nor forsake us. That no matter what you're going through today, it's real. But hold on to God. Trust in God. In this time, worship your God. A lot of times we feel like the best time that I can worship is when things are going good, when my life is perfect, everything is good, I have the best worship. But from experience, I can tell you that the best worship comes out of that hard times. The best worship comes out of when you're going through and you really look into God and you're trusting in God. So be encouraged this morning, saints. I hope I did not confuse you. I hope that you're encouraged by the word of God this morning to ask yourself, where do I fit in this book of Numbers? Who am I? Am I the other spies that saw nothing but the giants? Or am I Joshua and Caleb? Who am I in the church? Let us question ourselves and be intentional about who we are today. Amen.
Amen.